Hey everybody, welcome into the KSL Stream Center. I'm Shara Park. We've got a couple things here happening today. Wow, first of all, 5 years since the earthquake here in Utah, that 5.7 magnitude earthquake in Magna. Wow, can you believe that? Incredible. It's been 5 years since that day. We're going to talk about that here in the KSL Stream Center. But first, we also have weather that is happening here today. I want to first touch on that before we get into that discussion about that earthquake. And if you're watching on our KSL Facebook page, I want you to weigh in. Okay, I want you to tell me about where you were that day, where you were when we had that earthquake, because we all remember that moment. We have talked about it for years here in Utah, right? When is that big one going to hit? That was that moment where we thought, is this it? It wasn't, but it was that little moment where we had that thought, right? So where were you that day? Tell me about your experience in that moment, that 5.7, as we get into the discussion about what we learned that day. But first, let's talk about what we have going on outside with our weather, get you caught up on that situation, and then we'll get into that earthquake discussion here as we revisit that day. I've got Matt Johnson, who is standing by for me to talk about this. Matt Johnson, let's get folks caught up as we look at our live drive cam. We've got Derek Peterson out on the roads up in Bountiful for us, up in Davis County. I think he's in Bountiful. He's driving for us in Mobile 5. Where are we at with our weather situation? Let's get folks caught up real quick and where we're at with our snow totals, and then we'll get into our earthquake discussion and let you off the hook here for a few minutes. So catch us up real quick.
Yeah. So we've picked up 9 inches for Tooele. I got 8 inches up on the Bountiful bench, maybe even some spots with a little bit more. Fillmore down in central Utah also picking up some of those snow totals, 9 inches. But most of the bench now anywhere from 2 to 6 inches, with even some valley locations on that very same order, 2 to 6. The brunt of the snowfall, we'll call it steady, widespread snowfall, is pretty much over with.
Okay.
So what we're waiting for now is for some afternoon snow showers to fire up. If you live in the valleys, that's what we're waiting on. And they could bring another trace to 2 inches if they get heavy enough. But the snowfall in the mountains should be steady through the afternoon.
Okay. So the brunt of the commute, the messy commute part, we should be done.
Yeah, and we can't rule out some scattered snow showers for the evening commute, but it's not going to be anything like what we saw this morning.
Okay. How did we do in terms of our mountain snow where we needed it?
Yeah. So right now we're halfway through the storm for the mountains, and they've picked up anywhere from 7 to 15 inches. I think Alta's got the most right now at about 16. I am forecasting another 6 to 12 at least with the higher amounts up the Cottonwoods. They do quite well with the northwest flow. So still some more to come for the mountains, but the valleys, the totals will be less through the day.
Okay. I saw some information coming into our newsroom from Utah Highway Patrol, anywhere from 45, 50 crashes from this morning's commute. We talked about the storm last night, preparing folks getting into this morning's commute. We knew it was going to be heavy on the roads. Those plows were going to be out prepping the roads ready for this, but it always comes in. It gets slick. We've got those roads that are pre-treated, but it just gets slick out there. Going into tonight, what else do folks need to know?
Well, if you're an evening commuter, I did mention the snow showers, but there is a chance that we could see a little bit of lake effect try to get going. Not every single model's on board with that, but I think it's definitely noteworthy. And if we do get a lake effect band going or scattered snow showers off the lake, that would be this evening and potentially linger into tomorrow morning. Not the highest confidence on tomorrow morning's commute being messy, but there could be some lingering snow showers. So definitely something to keep in the back of your mind, and maybe tune in with us at 10 p.m., see what Kevin's got to say with the current trends with radar and whatnot, and we'll have a better read on, because those lake effect events are very finicky. A lot has to come together for them to pan out. So definitely something to check back in on.
Okay. If you lived in Utah, those lake effect bands can come out of
Yeah.
I feel like they can come out of nowhere and then dump inches on you. Okay, Matt Johnson, before I let you go, I want to ask you the question. We started this stream today with the purpose of talking about where you were 5 years ago on this day. It was March 18th, 2020. We had a 5.7 earthquake that really rattled this valley. Where were you?
I was sleeping.
Okay.
And it woke me up. I was living in northern Utah County. And yeah, it rattled me enough to wake me up. And that's pretty far from the epicenter, a solid 40 miles. So it's yeah.
Do you remember that feeling? Do you remember? Was it enough that you thought, could this be it?
It's
You were just a young pup.
It was, yeah.
You were a young pup.
It wasn't too bad down there. It was definitely kind of softened,
Yeah.
but it was enough to shake the blinds that kind of rattled around on my window, but not as strong as up here. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. All right, Matt Johnson. Thanks for the update on the weather. We wanted to give folks a quick update on what was happening out there. I know it's light. It's definitely a lot lighter on the roads than it was, obviously, a few hours ago. So definitely got some more coming our way throughout the day today. But Matt Johnson, thank you for being in the hot seat. We'll let you get out of here as we continue on to this discussion. All right, folks, we want to talk about this. This has been an interesting you think about it, 5 years ago. Let's revisit some of this video as we talk about this here today. On the morning of Wednesday, March 18th, 2020, northern Utah experienced a magnitude 5.7 earthquake with the epicenter in the north here, Magna, Utah. The main shock was widely felt across the Wasatch Front. Over 30,000 reports received by the USGS and the UUSS. More than 2,500 aftershocks occurred after that initial 5.7 earthquake. Utah experienced occasional shocks, spikes of 4.0 to a 3.0 magnitude for weeks and months afterwards. We had damage we saw throughout the Magna area, throughout areas of Salt Lake City as well. And it was something that really just kind of put in perspective where we live, right? That major fault along the Wasatch Front. I want to bring in right now, we have Bianca Velasquez from the Utah Division of Emergency Management. Thank you, Bianca, for joining us, for standing by. I asked you to join us here today because this was it's interesting to think that it's been 5 years for us, right? And to kind of revisit that day, to see some of the videos that have that we all remember. I remember, first of all, my experience here was in the newsroom that day, and the lights were all shaking in our studio, and it was a moment that I am embarrassed to say I didn't do what I was always told to do, right? To stop, to get under the desk, and to hold on and to wait. And I'm embarrassed to say I didn't do that. I kind of just froze in that moment. And we all learned valuable lessons from that day, didn't we?
We sure did. I will always remember how after the aftershocks were always like, okay, we got to drop on the ground and we got to cover and we got to hold on, which are the steps that you're supposed to do when an earthquake happens. So yeah, just make sure to remember what to do in those moments, even if you're scared.
Yeah, let's talk through from that moment on, what did that teach us as a state, right? What did that teach us? I mean, you work in this area of preparedness. What did it tell us in that moment as a state?
Well, it was kind of a wake-up call about how an emergency like this can happen at any time. And so what we have been doing as a state for preparing for a major earthquake is through outreach and education on Utah's earthquake risk and how to prepare. We have had many exercises to make our team understand the operations plan and how to coordinate and share information through research and infrastructure strengthening. So it's been a wake-up call for us as a division, but also in outreach and teaching our communities what to do in the case of an emergency like this.
Yeah, tell me about some of those programs. Okay, so we know about Be Ready Utah, right? That you guys have been out there in the communities trying to get people to really take this seriously. So tell me about the programs.
So yeah, we do have Be Ready Utah, which prepares communities on what to do. For example, developing a communications plan or creating an emergency plan, and most primarily getting a disaster kit that's 72 hours worth of materials and supplies for you and your family, and to keep them very close to you, like your car, your office, your home, and make sure that those are accessible and updated, which is really important.
Okay, walk me through what if I am going to start that kit, what does that emergency kit look like for me personally?
Yeah, so first water. Store at least 1 gallon of water per person per day for several days. What we recommend is 72 hours, but the more the better, of course. And then food. Keep a several-day supply of non-perishable food. Of course, a first aid kit, including bandages, antiseptic wipes, pain relievers, and any necessary personal medications. A flashlight, of course, having a working flashlight with extra batteries to stay safe. A radio is super important to stay communicated with, for example, the National Weather Radio with tone alert is essential to know what's happening outside of your home while you're staying and sheltering in place. And so important documents, a lot of people forget about this. Important documents of insurance, identification, and other important documents in a waterproof container, because you never know what's going to happen. And in those moments, you're not thinking about getting your insurance or your birth certificate or anything like that. So it's so important to have copies of those and to have them ready in your kit. Other essentials include a whistle, a dust mask, manual can opener, and extra batteries, of course. And shelter in place supplies include like plastic sheeting and duct tape to help shelter in place. Lastly, personal hygiene, toilet paper, soap, feminine products, things like that. And tools like a wrench or pliers to turn off utilities in the case of an emergency. And if you have any pets, don't forget your pet supplies. We want to make sure that those guys are safe too.
Yeah, you always need to have a little like to-go bag right there for your pets as well, so you can grab that and go. Let's talk about how you make that initial plan. I know these safety plans are important to have for your family. So what is that first conversation, or what do those first steps look like when coming up with a safety plan for your family? Because I don't want to scare my kids. I don't want to freak them out. So what does that look like, having those conversations?
Yeah, I would just start the conversation with your family about how you're going to develop communication during one of these times. You may all be at different places like work, school, home, and it's really important to know how you're going to communicate with each other. And I think that's really comforting to know I have a plan for when I'm separated from my family and how to get in touch with them again. So you need to make a plan about where you're going to meet. And if there's importantly more an outside of state contact, you can all connect to and get information on the family, because you might not be able to call your in-state contacts because of damages, but you could probably contact somebody out of state that everybody can kind of contact and then let know that everybody is safe at home.
Okay. One of the things I want to talk about, Bianca, here is interesting. Envision Utah, they've been doing this research to, coming up on this 5-year anniversary, and release some of the data on the eve of this anniversary. And some of the comments from people, they're not as concerned, I think, in terms of I don't know if it's just because the time frame, the distance from the 5 years spreading out on this, but they tend to make comments here about their community will come and rally, right? The community will be there for them in the event of a major emergency like this. So I hear these comments in this research, and I think, okay, how do we get our community involved, right? What are the steps of getting involved in our community to make sure the community is ready for a major disaster like an earthquake?
Of course, and that's so great to hear that people have so much trust in their communities, but there needs to be a plan
Right.
to lean
How
that
do we make
trust
sure the
on.
community is ready?
So there's a program called the Community Emergency Response Team, which is CERT, and those will teach basic search and rescue, medical response, team organization, and fire safety to your communities. And it helps, remind you to check on neighbors and help them through challenging times. So I would definitely look up CERT and seeing how those can support you and your community.
Okay. Tell me, when you guys are going out with Be Ready Utah, if I wanted to create an event where I could bring experts into my community, how do I do that to make it like an event like that?
Absolutely. I would visit bereadyutah.org and see what the options are. I know we're going through some changes right now, what the options will be for that teaching. So I would go onto that website and see what the resources are that are available, and we can have an expert come out or have someone teach you on how to teach your community as well.
Okay, that's great. All right. Well, this is kind of interesting. 5 years out, Bianca. Your message to our community about how the state is preparing for this, because we know, right? We've talked about it. The state is overdue, or we're expecting something like this within a 50-year time period.
Yeah. We're kind of always preparing for it, right? And what I would like to share right now is our Great Utah Shakeout, which is the largest earthquake drill in the state is happening April 17th. And that's a great way to get you and your organizations and your communities to practice in real time what to do in the case of this big one, right? I think we're all talking about the big one, preparing for that one. So this is a hands-on activity to go and prepare for that.
All right, Bianca, thank you so much. We appreciate your time here. We, of course, want to send people over that Be Ready Utah page. They've got lots of great information to get you and your family prepared in the event of an earthquake. Like I said, this was a 5.7 magnitude earthquake 5 years ago that I think it rattled all of us just a little bit, right? It had us all thinking about what we need to be doing to prepare in the event of a major disaster in our community, and had us all thinking and really looking at our preparedness within our own families and businesses. Bianca, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. We'll let you get on your way as we continue to look back on the event of that day. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Interesting, right? As we look back on this on the video from that day, I would love to hear your comments. Looking over here at some of these, I'm gonna look through some of these over here on our Facebook page. Okay, Kimmy said, I was home in West Valley City getting ready for work. It was my first quake experience, so it was a little scary. Yeah, it was a little scary. Let's see some of these other comments. I want to go through some. For some reason, I had showered early that day. This is coming from Linda. I came out of the shower and turned on KSL, and that we were all freaking out and couldn't figure out why. I later gathered there had been an earthquake. Yeah, crazy, something fun and crazy at the time. So sad that historic buildings in Southwest Salt Lake County were damaged. The Rio Grande was damaged as well. I don't know if I ever heard what happened with that. Let's see some of these other comments looking at here. Let's see, coming down. Yeah. You're looking at the video right here. So that was the studio here at KSL. That was the moment. You can see all the lights shaking there, that moment. We were in our studio. I'll kind of walk you through that moment. So I had just walked out of our studio. I was in our newsroom, which just really right behind me here. And I was at the desk, at our assignment desk, and everything started shaking. And I could see the lights in our studio shaking. And Lori had just walked around the desk, and Dan Spindle was still sitting at the desk. And it was surreal, right? And when you're in a studio, there's a lot of lights hanging and there's a lot of equipment everywhere, and it just didn't even feel real, right? And so we're very alert and very awake at that moment. We had just done a 3-hour newscast, and in that moment, you're very aware of things being able to fall. Like I said, I was a little embarrassed that I didn't drop and just jump under the desk at that moment. I was a little bit in shock. Obviously, the aftershocks that came, we did that. And it was interesting that day. We had we couldn't get on air after that. We had issues with everything got knocked off. We got knocked off air that day. And so we were scrambling as a station trying to get back online, get our equipment working, trying to get broadcasting at the time. I remember we were hearing from people saying that they could hear our microphones going out, but they couldn't get the broadcast signal out. And so it was a lesson to us, figuring out what worked, our equipment. And so it was a lesson for everyone, figuring out how we could broadcast to the community when we were obviously struggling as well with how our equipment was functioning that day. And we learned some major lessons that day as well. And so we have now fixed that and figured out how to be able to do that in the event that we have a major earthquake and our equipment is damaged. And hopefully we've now remedied that situation and we will be able to do that. So anyway, just wanted to kind of revisit that and see where we sit as a result of that. Some interesting statistics we've learned from that day. Again, 30,000 reports that it was felt along the Wasatch Front. That earthquake was felt. More than 2,500 aftershocks. Some of these videos you're seeing that were sent in to us from different folks. So 2,500 aftershocks as a result of that day. So if you're watching on our Facebook page, I'd love to hear where you were, if you felt it. Did you feel it the same way some of these videos are portraying that earthquake? Tess here just weighed in. I was living in Sunset. The earthquake woke her up. I can imagine it did. It's interesting to see how far out it spread, right? The epicenter was in the Magna area, and we saw the damage to the buildings there, the facades. We had one mobile home park out in that area that had significant damage. We had Dan Rascone. I remember going out talking to families in that area, and they had entire shelves of food that were just thrown in their trailers. Silvercrest Elementary, you can see the facade of that building, those bricks coming off there. And yeah, they had some pretty significant damage to the facade of that building as well. We saw some cracking down in Salt Lake City. Some of the buildings here in downtown had some cracking. Oh, I remember the Salt Lake Temple. They had some damage as well, as they were doing some renovations there. Let's see some other comments. Jacob on Facebook woke me up in Draper. Scary. Yep, Draper felt that pretty good as well. Let's see other comments. Let's see what other Facebook comments we got. Hey, weigh in. I want to hear where else you felt it along the Wasatch Front. How far out we felt this earthquake. Kind of wild to believe that it was 5 years ago. Can you believe that? Wow, 5 years. Incredible. Interesting. We're seeing these articles, like I mentioned, in the Desert News today. This one by Amy Jo O'Donoghue. Utah is overdue for big earthquake. Are we prepared? Is the article in the Deseret News today. And the key points, the key takeaway here, a new survey reveals the attitudes of people regarding the warning of Utah being long overdue for a major earthquake hitting the area within the next 50 years. The survey was officially released on the eve of the last significant earthquake to hit the Wasatch Front. The polling data released by Envision Utah showed some surprising results about the depth of worry and at what scale the concern over an earthquake resonates with people. So the question I have for you is, how worried are you about the next big one, about the big one? On this 5-year anniversary, Envision Utah took a hard look at people's sentiments ahead of the 5-year anniversary, and the 3 key findings they found were this: Utahns are more concerned about the immediate short-term effects of an earthquake rather than long-term damage to the economy or infrastructure. The second one here, many Utahns place a significant amount of responsibility on state and local governments to prepare the state for a major earthquake and feel more action is needed. The third takeaway here, Utahns view a major earthquake as a life-altering event with widespread destruction. Again, this is the takeaways from the Deseret News article. Some of the comments that they report in this article from the Deseret News, this is coming from this Envision Utah survey. One of the comments reported, honestly, I think it would be okay. Community members would come together. It wouldn't be too bad. That is one of the comments. A second comment they report here, it depends, but short term, I would expect there to be help from people helping their neighbors, people from outside coming in to help. Long term, would have to rebuild infrastructure and housing, the economy. A lot of rebuilding would have to happen. Okay, I get that comment, but I worry, are we depending too much on other people versus doing that work ourselves? That's my worry. The third comment they report in this article, I think that most areas, as far as government and emergency services, are pretty prepared. I think they would be overwhelmed. Hospitals may be less prepared. We'll see. So, I don't know. What do you think? Are we prepared as a state? Are we prepared as a community? Are we prepared as neighbors? Are we prepared within our own homes? So we had the Utah Division of Emergency Management join us, talked about some of the ways to get prepared. Right here are some of those ways. Get earthquake insurance, secure items that could fall within your own home, keep a 3-day supply of food and water, have portable radio ready to go in your home, keep those emergency kits stocked and ready to go for you and your individual members of your family, your pets as well. So those are some ways that you can get prepared within your own home. During an earthquake, here's some just simple steps that you can always keep handy, ready to go. Seek cover, move under a desk or table. These are the simple things we learn in elementary school, right? Go towards an interior wall, move away from windows. If in bed, stay there, cover your head with pillows, blankets. If outside, avoid power lines and trees. We know those things. Again, we learn these things when we're young, but in a moment of an emergency, sometimes those go out the window. We know that. I experienced that as well. So anyway, just revisiting that day 5 years ago. Here's some of those videos from KSL.
Okay.
It's interesting to look back.
We're okay, guys. I'm okay.
This was one of those homes in Magna. Dan Rascone, I believe, was doing
okay,
this
guys.
story. He went and sat in these homes with these families. That's the moment. So there's my co-anchor right there, Dan Spindle. There's Lori walking out of the studio. Can you imagine all those lights above you? They start shaking. It's kind of scary. Yeah. And then we all went outside. So I was just on the other side of the studio, where Lori was just walking out. Yeah. Anyway, folks, just wanted to revisit that moment with you. If you're sitting here and you're watching with me, weigh in on Facebook here on YouTube. Stephanie Smith. Yeah, she said mobile homes in Magna got it bad. They did. She said we don't have many earthquake drills at schools. I don't know. Growing up, I did out in West Valley. I went to Robert Frost Elementary, and we had earthquake drills all the time. I don't know. I assume they're still doing those. If they're not, I'm curious as to why. But yeah, that was a moment. That was a wake-up call for all of us. So can you believe that 5 years ago? It's been 5 years today that we had that 5.7. So just to recap that. On the morning of Wednesday, March 18th, 2020, northern Utah experienced that 5.7 magnitude earthquake, the epicenter in Magna, Utah. That main shock widely felt across the Wasatch Front, with over 30,000 reports received by the USGS. That damage, mostly like in Magna there, a lot of facades, the exteriors of buildings. We saw some cracking though as well. Sally said she felt it in South Ogden. Linda said a grocery store she felt it in. So folks are saying they definitely felt it all across the Wasatch Front. So if you felt it, weigh in. It's interesting to see where folks felt that earthquake, how much of it they felt. Was it just a little shake? Was it something that really jolted you? I think we all felt it differently. Seeing some of these videos it brings it back, right? Yeah, it just kind of depends on where you were. It's definitely the first major earthquake I ever felt where I vividly just remember like thinking, oh yeah, I mean, this is it for sure. Yeah, definitely brings it back. Watching these videos. I'm trying to think of where that one was. That says China in the bottom. I don't know where that one was. It says March 18th, 2020, though. I'm curious. I don't know where that one was. Some sort of warehouse. Interesting. All right, you guys. Hey, just here in the KSL Stream Center. Was just wanted to jump on, talk to you about this. Appreciate the Utah Division of Emergency Management joining us to talk earthquake as we revisit this day. We'll post some links here in the chat, some of the stories from 5 years ago if you want to revisit that day. But continue to weigh in. I like reading the comments of where you were, what you remember from that day. Share your experience from that as well. Always good to revisit, to remind folks and to look back and to remember what we learned from that day and prepare as a community and to put resources out there if you don't have those resources available to you right now. Just again, good time to prepare those emergency kits, to think about getting a plan in place for you and your family, and know what's available to you in your community if you'd like to start preparing right now. So we'll share those with you in the chat. And appreciate you just joining in here for the KSL Stream Center. We'll join you. We'll see you over on KSL 5 News at noon, and appreciate you. Be safe out on the roads. We have more weather coming throughout the evening commute, so be safe out there.